Did you know up until that point that you would try to make your living as a writer, or this opportunity just presented itself?
I had thought about seriously pursuing writing before that first opportunity came up. And so I'd been studying it. I'd always been interested in it. So I'd always been reading screenplays, reading books about screenwriting, but more as just part of a larger filmmaking curriculum. I didn't know necessarily what I wanted to do, but it was probably in the few months leading up to that I thought maybe writing is actually where I really want to focus, where I'm most fulfilled, where I'm decent at it. And I had perhaps just kind of been more vocal about that at where I was working, and that's probably why this job came up. And I was considered to write it. And so I think I'd thought about it before writing that project. And I think writing that project really solidified, okay, this is what I want to do. And probably at that point, it got in my head that I should move out to LA if I'm going to get serious about this.
You grew up in North Carolina, correct?
Yeah.
At what point did you say you would move to LA? So you're living in Georgia, you get this great opportunity. Mm-hmm. It sounds like the perfect thing for someone as a first-time screenwriting project.
Yeah, it was great. I think from that point, it was about 6 months to when I left Atlanta, but I wasn't actually sure where I was going to go. Because my girlfriend was also looking for a move to get more serious about her profession in performance and writing. But we didn't know where a good fit for both of us would be. So we saved up tons of money, and we actually took about a 5-month road trip. And we checked out New York. We were there for about a month. My sister lived there at the time, and so we stayed with her for a month. We went to Chicago, stayed with my aunt, went to LA. Didn't know anyone, so a couple Airbnbs and some motel rentals. But basically we wanted to park in those cities for a couple weeks so that we could see what it would be like to live there beyond just visiting. Both as the city, how we liked it, and also professionally, like what was going on. And after doing the 3 of them, pretty quickly LA became the clear choice. And so then we drove back to Georgia, picked up all of our stuff out of a storage unit, and then trucked it all the way back out west.
That's really interesting. So instead of doing a road trip documentary or something, you just did, your life was this road trip, and then you sort of based on where you wanted to land, so to speak.
Yeah, we checked out, we went to tons of screenings, tons of theaters in all those cities, tried to go to as many meetups as possible, set up as many meetings just over coffee with whoever we could, just to get a sense of the community and the industry within those cities and where we would have the best shot at starting off. And LA was the choice that became apparent, especially for me as a feature writer. And then once we saw the theater scene in LA, it worked out for my girlfriend as well.
Where was the first place you drove to? Like when you got off the 5 or whatever, 101, where was the first destination?
The first place we stopped was West Hollywood. I had a friend, it was actually my mom's best friend's son, who I'd met a few times, and I asked him if we could crash on his couch for a bit, and he let us, as way longer than we'd told him we probably would be there, but right in West Hollywood.
Wow. Mm. How was the parking?
It was tough. Yeah.
That's the thing a lot of people I don't think about, And
yeah.
The parking is such an issue so many places.
In my budget, I allow like at least 2 tickets a year. I just figure I'll mess up somewhere.
So you go back to Georgia, you get your stuff, you come here to LA. Was it more difficult than you had initially imagined?
It was not more difficult than I had imagined moving to LA, but it was difficult. I'd saved up and I was ready to dig in, and I'd hoped that maybe I had been over-prepared, but I felt like I was prepared. And it was tough, especially that first year. And it's not that I didn't have successes that first year, it's that it was way more kind of up and down. It was higher highs and lower lows that first year of not just screenwriting, but even just living in a new city, a big city, an expensive city. And so I got here, immediately started looking for part-time work just wherever I could get it. Started looking for internships wherever I could. I ended up with 3 internships at one point. I was going into, I was assisting at a talent agency 2 days a week. I was remotely reading scripts for a production company. And then as soon as that one ended, I got into reading scripts for a management company here in LA. And so it was really busy, all of course unpaid, so I'm doing my part-time work as well, and I'm trying to write my own material at the same time. And so it was a real grind at first. And the second year got easier, but just as there weren't as many lower lows or higher highs, but it was still that little bit of a grind. And I think I let the pedal off a little bit. I thought I had kind of, I figured this out. And I think LA started pushing back a little bit as well. And I felt it. And so now after just about 3 whole years here, I feel like, okay, I think I figured out at least how to live here. Now let's figure out how to screenwrite here.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Okay. What was the most difficult thing to get used to in terms of living in LA? And then also, what's the most difficult in terms of looking for screenwriting work?
In terms of living in LA, the most difficult thing for me was definitely the traffic and the timing of things. I am a planner, so I definitely want to be there on time for whatever meeting, whatever thing I have going on. And not only was I holding myself to that standard, but also other people. So the traffic I knew would be really bad, and so I would leave excessively early, and I'd get to a coffee meeting for someone to meet with over a project, or just another writer to ask for advice. And I would be upset when they were late, even if it was like 5 or 10 minutes late, like irrationally upset. And so it was a difficult learning curve for me to sort of learn to let that go, and just people are going to be either really late or really early because traffic is just so erratic here, and you can never tell where it's going to be backed up and for how long. So once I started just getting in the habit of making sure that I always had a new book on my Kindle or my phone or something, I always had something to do and something to work on, it got a lot easier for me to just sort of hang out and wait for people to meet. And also I realized how great people were about when I was running late, how they were cool with it. And I was like, well, I need to learn how to be cool about it too.
Yeah, I remember for me coming here as well, that was a lesson someone had to sit me down and talk to me about. Because I would hold myself to that standard, and I would beat myself up if I was like 5 minutes late, and then the same for someone else. And so that was a tough one for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think if you're conscientious when someone else isn't, it's like you're like, whoa, you know. And I think that was a tough one for me too. Yeah.
Well, I would feel terrible if I was running late, and then when I would finally get there, the other person would just be like, yeah, no big deal, traffic. I was like, oh, I need to learn how to be like that. I need to be as cool about it as you are when you're the one running late.
Right.
That's because, you know, I felt taken care of, and I wanted to make sure that I was taking care of people too, and they ran into traffic.
Sure. And then there's just people that are chronically late all the time. They just use that as an excuse, but...
Well, the great thing about LA is that it's the permanent excuse. You can just always just say traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's a great time to give yourself time to do something if you're super early for things. Because sometimes you'll surprise yourself and you'll be like 45 minutes early for something. I'm assuming. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That happens to me too. And then you're just sitting there and you have all this time, and you can do other things.
Well, what I started doing is anytime I'd have a meeting, I would just go there hours early, and then I would just work. If I had the time, I would just get there super early, so I don't have to worry about it. And now all that time between when I would drive and meeting someone, I would just work there. Instead of working at home or a coffee shop, I would just go work at the coffee shop I was about to meet them at. That way I'm just there, and I can literally just work right up until whenever they show up, whether they're early, late, right on time. I can get my work done.
So it sounds like the most difficult part of just the living arrangements in LA is the traffic and wanting to be on time for people, and that's understandable and that's commendable. What about the most difficult time in getting acclimated to finding screenwriting work? Because there's also a looseness the way things are done here too, in terms of and everyone's nice and you never hear from them again.
I don't know if I'm really like sort of qualified to answer that question. I feel like I'm still trying to figure out how to get screenwriting work. I feel like the screenwriting work I've gotten is mostly through friends or friends of friends. I have yet to figure out how to just secure that job, find that job, get it, and start working. Both of the jobs I've had since I've moved here, it was not planned to be a job. It was a friend saying, hey, I have a friend out in LA who actually directs films. You guys should grab coffee just to catch up, see what they're up to. And we have coffee, we end up talking, and then a few days later, I get the call, hey, would you actually want to write my screenplay? But there was never any sort of, oh, I'm going in to pitch on this thing, or I'm going to meet with this director because he's looking for a screenwriter. There was never any of that in any of the jobs I've ever gotten. So I guess I'd say the most difficult thing is figuring that out, that you won't necessarily know how your jobs are going to come to you, and being okay with that, and going to meet people and hang out with people and talk to people with no sense of a job on the other end, but recognize that just through meeting people, you're gonna have more opportunities, even if you don't necessarily know what they are.
That was another conversation someone had with me too, just the looseness of, in terms of, you might, we should totally connect, never hear from them, and then you hear from them like a year later, and then they have something great for you. And you were like, wow, they never even returned my call. That's so weird. I thought, okay, I'll take it, you know?
Yeah.
But that's another thing too. It's like, there's not really a lot of rules, and there's no hard yes or no sometimes.
Yeah, I think that the way this industry works, it could be that 1 year ago, I met someone who's gonna change my life next year, and I have no clue who that person is. But I could get a call from someone I met at a mixer or some sort of table read, something, and say, hey, that thing you said about that project you were working on, I really dug that. And my buddy is actually doing something similar. You should talk to him. And then that ends up being a job. But I have no clue that that thing I did a year ago is gonna pay off a year from now, because that's just how it works. And it's really tough to calculate. So I think, if anything, I've learned just to not try and calculate.
Yeah, nothing's definite. Yeah, and that's a hard, especially if you're a planner, and I get that, and I'm can fall into the same way that you like things to be, boxes to be checked off, and so that's another one that's interesting. There's nothing definite, no hard yes or no.